My sister laughed at me for living in a small apartment until she found out I owned the building she lived in. She called it a shoebox, and I lived in it. Jenna, I just don't understand why you insist on living like this, Vanessa said, wrinkling her nose as she surveyed my one-bedroom apartment. She stood in the center of my living room, somehow managing to make my carefully curated space feel inadequate with just a glance. It's like you're allergic to success. I'm Jenna Harper, 32, financially stable but deliberately low profile. My apartment isn't huge, but it's comfortable. Hardwood floors, tall windows that let in plenty of natural light, and just enough space for me and my books. It's in a nice building in a good neighborhood, but nothing flashy. Not everyone needs a penthouse to be happy, I replied, setting down 2 cups of coffee on my small dining table. Vanessa laughed, that tinkling sound that always managed to sound both melodic and condescending. It's not about need, Jen. It's about ambition. She pulled out her phone, swiping through photos. Look at my place. This is what working hard gets you. Her building was the Monarch, just 5 blocks away, all glass and steel and modern angles, with a rooftop pool and doorman. She'd moved in 4 months ago and hadn't stopped talking about it since. It looks nice, I said, because it did. Everything Vanessa touched looked nice. It was her superpower, along with making me feel like I was somehow failing at life despite my steady job, healthy savings account, and peaceful existence. Nice. She locked her phone with a dramatic sigh. Jen, when are you going to start living up to your potential? I mean, you're what, 32? And still living like a recent college grad. Don't you want more than this? Her perfectly manicured hand gestured at my apartment like she was indicating a particularly sad exhibit at a zoo. What Vanessa didn't know, what nobody knew really, was that I owned the building I lived in. And 3 others, including the Monarch, where she paid an eye-watering amount in rent each month.
To me.
Well, to Harper Holdings LLC, which was me, sitting right across from her in jeans and a sweater that she had once called aggressively boring. I'm comfortable, I said, a response that always seemed to frustrate her more than any defense I could mount. Comfortable is what people say when they've given up, she replied, taking a delicate sip of her coffee. You should come see my place again. Maybe it'll inspire you to finally reach for something better. My phone buzzed with an email notification. New acquisition opportunity in the warehouse district. Major potential for conversion to mixed use. Exactly the kind of deal that had helped me build my quiet empire. I silenced it without looking. I'll think about it, I said, knowing I wouldn't. Vanessa's eyes narrowed slightly. She'd always been able to sense when I was humoring her. As kids, it had led to explosive arguments. As adults, it led to her trying harder to fix my life. I worry about you, Jen, she said, her voice softening into what I called her concerned older sister tone. You're smart. You were always the smart one. But you're letting life pass you by while you work at that little property management company, come home to this shoebox and repeat. Where's the adventure? The growth. If she only knew that her rent check each month was just one small deposit in my growing empire. That the entry-level position in real estate she thought I had was actually my own company, managing properties worth over $8 million. Not everyone measures success the same way, Van. Clearly, she said with a small laugh. But even by your own metrics, you can't be satisfied with this. She gestured around my apartment again. Troy knows a guy who's renting out a gorgeous loft downtown. It's got twice the space of this place, and... Troy, I interrupted. The boyfriend you've had for all of 6 months. She flushed slightly. 6 happy months. Not all of us are afraid of commitment, Jen. I'm not afraid of commitment, I said quietly. I'm just selective about what I commit to. Like this apartment? She shook her head. You've been here, what, for years now? 5, I corrected. My point exactly. You're stagnating. Or I'm stable, I countered. She checked her watch, a delicate rose gold piece that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment on the entire building, and stood up. I need to run. Brunch with Troy and some friends from his firm. She gathered her designer coat and bag, then paused at the door. Just think about what I said. Life's too short to live small, Jen. As the door closed behind her, I exhaled slowly, feeling the familiar mix of relief and irritation that always followed our visits. I walked to the window and watched as she emerged onto the street below, immediately transforming into a woman in her natural habitat, confident, purposeful, admired. I pulled out my phone and opened the email that had come in during our conversation. Another property opportunity, this one with potential for significant returns. I smiled to myself as I thought about adding a fifth building to my portfolio. If Vanessa only knew, the sister she pitted for living small was actually her landlord. The irony was almost too perfect. One day she'd know the truth. But not yet. Not until the moment was right. After all, I'd always been patient. It was how I'd built everything I had, slowly, quietly, and completely on my own terms. Unlike Vanessa, who needed everyone to see her success, I was content knowing it existed, whether anyone else could see it or not. For now, that was enough. Vanessa always had to be the center of every room, even our childhood living room. Growing up Harper meant growing up in Vanessa's shadow. 2 years older, infinitely more confident, and blessed with our mother's striking features, my sister seemed destined for a life in the spotlight while I was content to observe from the wings. Smile bigger, Vanessa. Hold that pose. Dad would say, camcorder in hand, documenting her each achievement. Dance recitals, debate tournaments, cheerleading competitions. My sister collected trophies and accolades the way other kids collected comic books. I was the quiet one, often introduced as Vanessa's little sister, rather than by my own name. While she commanded attention at the dinner table with stories of social conquests, I'd slip away to my room with my calculator and notebook, working out compound interest problems for fun. Your sister's going to be famous someday, our next-door neighbor would tell me as we watched Vanessa practice her pageant walk across our front lawn. I'd nod politely, never mentioning that while Vanessa was perfecting her smile, I was perfecting my understanding of investment strategies. At 14, I'd already read every book on finance in our local library and had started tracking theoretical stock portfolios in a spiral notebook. High school only amplified our differences. Vanessa was prom queen, class president, and voted most likely to succeed by our classmates, who clearly defined success as being beautiful and popular. I was on the math team, edited the school newspaper, and spent weekends working at a local property management office, fascinated by how buildings could generate passive income. You could be pretty too if you tried, Vanessa told me once, attempting to make over my sensible wardrobe. Boys don't care how smart you are if you don't look good. But I didn't care what boys or anyone thought. I cared about my plan. College on scholarship, followed by a career that would build long-term wealth rather than flashy, immediate status. We both got what we wanted. Vanessa attended an expensive private university on our parents' dime, majoring in communications and joining the right sorority. I went to state on full academic scholarship, double majoring in finance and real estate, working part-time at a property management company where I learned the business from the ground up. During college breaks, Vanessa would return home with stories of exclusive parties and influential connections. I'd come back with spreadsheets showing the growth in my small but steadily expanding investment portfolio, started with money saved for my weekend job. No one but me seemed interested in those spreadsheets. Then, during my senior year of college, everything changed. Our parents' car slid off an icy road one February night, and suddenly, Vanessa and I were orphans at 23 and 21. Grief affects people differently. Vanessa coped by surrounding herself with friends, throwing herself into social distractions, as if keeping busy enough would outpace the pain. I retreated further into what I knew best: numbers, plans, the comforting predictability of financial models. The inheritance wasn't massive, about $80,000 each, but it was something. For me, it represented not just money, but responsibility. My parents had worked their entire lives to save that amount. How I used it would define their legacy. Vanessa saw it differently. "You're so uptight about money," she said, when I questioned her purchase of a $5,000 designer handbag just 2 months after the funeral. Mom and Dad would want us to enjoy life. They'd want us to be happy. Within 2 years, her inheritance was gone. Designer clothes, a luxury car lease, lavish vacations with friends who disappeared as soon as her money did. I used mine as a down payment on a small, rundown fourplex in an up-and-coming neighborhood. I lived in one unit, fixed up the others on weekends, and rented them out. The income covered my mortgage, and then some. A year later, I sold it for nearly double what I'd paid, rolled the profits into a larger property, and repeated the process. At 25, I found a Harper Holdings LLC. At 27, I acquired my second building. At 29, my third. Now, at 32, I owned 4 buildings with a combined value of over $8 million. Not that anyone would know it from looking at me, or my apartment, or my sensible 5-year-old Honda. Vanessa knew I worked in real estate, but assumed I was some kind of administrative assistant. Entry level, she called it once. I never corrected her. Part of me was waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. Another part had grown accustomed to being underestimated, had learned, in fact, to use it to my advantage. You'll never guess who I ran into, Vanessa said during one of our monthly coffees, shortly after I'd acquired the Monarch. Melissa Chun from high school. She remembers you from math team. She's a financial advisor now. Maybe she could help you start investing for retirement. I nearly choked on my coffee. The night before, I'd been reviewing projections showing that my real estate holdings would likely exceed $12 million within 5 years. I'll think about it, I said. Vanessa smiled, pleased with herself for helping her struggling little sister. That's all I ask, Jen. Someone has to look out for your future. I nodded, letting her believe she was the successful one, the one with all the answers. It wasn't entirely her fault. Our whole lives, everyone had told her she was destined for greatness, while overlooking the quiet girl in the corner with the calculator. One day, the truth would come out. But not yet. For now, I was content to live my quiet life in my shoebox apartment, watching my empire grow, one rent check at a time, including the substantial one that Vanessa wrote each month, blissfully unaware that her little sister was cashing it.
When she showed me her new lease, she laughed.
I bit my tongue. The call came at 11:23 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in bed reviewing tenant applications for a recently vacated unit in my West Side property when Vanessa's name flashed across my phone screen. Hello. I answered, immediately alert. Vanessa never called this late unless something was wrong. He's leaving me. Her voice cracked, thick with tears. Troy is leaving me, Jen. 30 minutes later, she was at my door, mascara streaking down her face, a half-empty bottle of wine clutched in her hand. 3 years, she said, collapsing onto my couch. 3 years, and he ends it with a text. A text, Jenna. Troy had been her longest relationship, an investment banker with family money and the kind of connections Vanessa craved. They'd been living together in his penthouse for the past 2 years. I'm so sorry, I said, meaning it despite my complicated feelings about Troy, who had once referred to my career as adorably small time, at a dinner I wished I could forget. He's been seeing someone else, she continued, taking a long swig from the bottle. His assistant.
How cliché is that?
And now I have 48 hours to get out because she's moving in. 48 hours? That's insane. You live there. His name is on the lease. She wiped her eyes, smearing what remained of her makeup. God, I'm such an idiot. I let him handle everything because he said it was his area of expertise. She made air quotes, her voice bitter. You can stay here, I offered. As long as you need. She looked around my apartment with red-rimmed eyes, and I could see her actively suppressing a grimace. Thanks, but I actually already found a place. This surprised me. Already?
How?
I know people, Jen. The familiar hint of superiority crept back into her voice. One call to Madison, you remember her from college? Her husband works in luxury real estate. They had the perfect place available. She pulled out her phone, suddenly animated despite her emotional state. Look. She thrust the screen toward me, displaying professional photos of a sleek one-bedroom at the Monarch, my building. The unit had opened up just 3 weeks ago when a software developer had relocated for work. I'd personally approved the rental rate increase before listing it. "It's at the Monarch," she said proudly. "Not the penthouse I had with Troy, obviously, but still in the right neighborhood. I can't downgrade too much. It would look bad." I took the phone, pretending to study images of a property I knew intimately. "It's beautiful," I said, because it was. I'd selected the finishes myself during the building's renovation last year. "I know," she exclaimed, her mood lifting. "And here's the best part. I got it for below market rate." Madison's husband owed her a favor. That explained the application that had come across my desk yesterday, a special consideration rental flagged by the management company. I'd approved it automatically, not bothering to check the tenant name. A mistake I wouldn't repeat. "That's lucky," I managed. "It's not luck, it's connections," she corrected me, taking her phone back. "Something you might want to think about developing. Speaking of which." She hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I might need to borrow some money, just until my next commission check comes in." I blinked. "How much?" "Just the security deposit and first month's rent. $6,000. I almost laughed. Vanessa wanted to borrow $6,000 from me to pay me. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. "I'll think about it," I said. She misinterpreted my hesitation. "I know it's a lot for you, but I'm good for it, I swear." "It's not that." I began, then stopped. What could I say? That I didn't need to loan her the money because I'd just waived the fees entirely? That would mean explaining everything, and I wasn't ready for that conversation. "I'll figure it out," she said with forced brightness. "Maybe I'll see if Troy will give me back some of what I invested in his place." 2 weeks later, Vanessa invited me to a housewarming party at her new apartment. She'd gotten the money somewhere not from me and moved in with remarkable speed. As I rode the elevator up to the 11th floor of my own building, I couldn't help but appreciate the absurdity of the situation. "Welcome to my humble abode," she announced as she swung open the door to Unit 1107. The apartment looked even better than it had in the listing photos. Vanessa had an undeniable talent for making spaces beautiful, even on what she called her temporarily restricted budget. Modern furniture, strategic lighting, and artfully arranged accessories transformed the already upscale apartment into something worthy of a design magazine. "Quite a step up from your place, right?" she whispered as she led me through a tour, champagne flute in hand. "The bathroom alone is bigger than your bedroom." I nodded politely, noting the custom shower tile I'd selected during the renovation. "And the best part," she continued, leading me to the balcony, "is the building. The Monarch is the address right now. Everybody who's anybody is trying to get in." "It seems nice," I said mildly. "Nice." She laughed. "Jen, this is what happens when you aim high instead of settling. You could have something like this too, you know." I looked at her, standing proudly in an apartment that existed because of my vision and investment. "Maybe someday," I said. "Well," she clinked her glass against mine, "at least one of us is living the dream." If she only knew, the sister she pitted was actually her landlord. The irony was almost too perfect. But that revelation would come later, I decided, as I watched Vanessa hold court in her new living room, already rebuilding her image after Troy's betrayal. For now, I was content to observe from the sidelines, as I always had. After all, I'd just become the closest witness to her life. And she was paying me for the privilege. She tried to charm the manager, then threatened him. The arrogance hadn't changed. For 3 months, everything ran smoothly. Vanessa paid her rent on time, settled into her new apartment, and continued to subtly mock my lifestyle choices whenever we met for our monthly sisterly dinners. I continued to smile and nod, increasingly curious about how long this charade could last. Then, on the 6th of the month, my phone pinged with an automated alert from my property management system, tenant #1107, and payment overdue. Vanessa Harper. I frowned at the notification. Vanessa had never been late before. Protocol at my properties was clear and consistent. 5 days late, polite reminder. 10 days late, formal notice. 15 days late, begin eviction proceedings. No exceptions. It's business, not personal. I decided to wait. Maybe it was a simple oversight. 3 days later, Mark Jensen, the on-site property manager at the Monarch, forwarded me an email. 2. Management at themonarchresidences.com from Vanessa@harper@gmail.com. Subject: rent payment. Hi Mark. So sorry for the delay. Had a little mix-up with my bank. We'll have it to you by end of week. Thanks for understanding. Face blowing a kiss. Vanessa. Mark's message was brief. How do you want me to handle this? I typed back. Standard protocol. Courteous but firm. When the 10th day passed with no payment, the system automatically generated a formal notice to be delivered to her door. I could have intervened, overridden the automated process, but something stopped me. Perhaps it was professional integrity, or perhaps a deeper curiosity about how my sister would handle genuine adversity. That evening, my phone lit up with her name. Can you believe this? She fumed without preamble. The building just put some ridiculous late notice on my door where all my neighbors could see it. So embarrassing. That sounds standard for late rent, I said carefully, stirring pasta sauce on my stove. It's not late. I told them I'd pay by the end of the week. God, the manager there is such a jerk. No customer service skills whatsoever. I knew Mark well, a consummate professional who'd managed high-end properties for 15 years before I hired him away from a competitor. Maybe they have policies they have to follow, I suggested. Policies can be bent for good tenants, she snapped. I'm going down there tomorrow and straightening this out. Maybe talk to the owner directly. I nearly dropped my spoon. The owner? Do you even know who owns the building? Some investment group, I think. Doesn't matter. Once they hear how I've been treated, they'll fire that manager and probably call my rent for the trouble. The next day, I watched through the security feed as Vanessa stormed into the management office, dressed to intimidate in a power suit and stilettos. Mark greeted her with professional courtesy, but I could tell from his posture that he recognized trouble. Mr. Jensen, she began, her voice dripping with false sweetness, I think we need to discuss the notice I received yesterday. Of course, Ms. Harper. Please have a seat. She remained standing. I explained to you that I'd have the payment by the end of the week. There was no need for a formal notice. Unfortunately, our payment policy is quite clear, Mark replied, gesturing to a framed document on the wall, the tenant payment guidelines I'd drafted myself. We send formal notices on the 10th day of non-payment, regardless of communication. But that's ridiculous. Vanessa's facade cracked slightly. You know I'm good for it. I'm not some deadbeat tenant. No one is suggesting that, Ms. Harper. This is standard procedure for all residents. I doubt that very much, she scoffed. I bet if one of your penthouse tenants was a few days late, you'd be falling over yourself to accommodate them. Mark remained admirably calm. Every tenant is treated equally under our policies. That's when Vanessa switched tactics, leaning forward with a practiced smile. Look, Mark, may I call you Mark? I think we got off on the wrong foot. I understand you're just doing your job. Perhaps we could work something out. Her voice had dropped to what I recognized as her flirtation tone. Mark's expression didn't change. I'm afraid the policy is non-negotiable, Ms. Harper. Her smile vanished. Do you know how many influential people I know in this city? She demanded, leaning over his desk. One post for me about how this luxury building treats its tenants, and your occupancy rate will plummet. I understand your frustration, but I don't have the authority to waive late fees. That would have to come from ownership, and they're very clear about enforcing the lease terms equally for all tenants. Then get me a meeting with the owner, she insisted. Today. The ownership group prefers to remain hands-off with day-to-day operations, he explained, using the script I'd provided for just such situations. But I'm happy to pass along your concerns. Hands-off. She laughed bitterly. More like cowards.
Fine.
Tell your mystery bosses that Vanessa Harper isn't someone they want as an enemy. As she stormed out, Mark sent me the security footage along with a simple text. Your move, boss. 5 more days passed. No payment. The system generated the 15-day notice, which would typically trigger eviction proceedings. For the first time since founding my company, I hesitated. That evening, I received another alert. Vanessa had submitted a partial payment, $1,000, on her $3,200 rent. Then my phone rang. "Hey," she said, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? I need to talk to you about something." "Everything okay?" I asked, though I had a good idea what this was about. "Not really," she admitted. I could use some advice. From someone who's good with money." It was perhaps the first genuine compliment she'd given me in years. "Of course," I said. "My place at 10? Actually, could we meet at that little cafe near your building?" She hesitated. "I'd rather not have this conversation in your apartment."
Pride.
Even in difficulty, her pride remained intact. "See you at 10, I said, already formulating a plan. It was time for Vanessa to meet her landlord. She looked like she saw a ghost when she saw me in the boardroom. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, ordered a latte, and waited. Vanessa was rarely on time, a small power play she'd perfected over the years. Sure enough, she breezed in at 10:17, sunglasses hiding what I suspected were tired eyes. "Sorry I'm late," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. Traffic was insane. We both knew she lived 6 blocks away. "No problem," I replied, pushing a cappuccino toward her, her usual order, which I'd taken the liberty of purchasing. "You said you wanted to talk?" She removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "I'm in a bit of a situation," she admitted, her voice lower than normal. "Financially." I nodded, waiting. "After Troy and I split, things have been complicated. My commission checks have been smaller than expected. The real estate market is slow right now." She fidgeted with her cup. "I've fallen behind on rent." "How far behind?" I asked, though I knew the exact figure down to the penny. "About 3 weeks," she said vaguely. "The building management is being completely unreasonable. They've threatened eviction if I don't pay the full amount plus late fees by Friday." Friday, the exact deadline I'd instructed Mark to give her yesterday via formal notice. "Can you make the payment?" I asked. She bit her lip. "Not the full amount. I was hoping maybe you could help me out. Just until my next commission check comes in next month." "How much are we talking about?" "4,000, she said, not meeting my eyes. "I know it's a lot to ask." It was $3,200 in rent plus $800 in accumulated late fees. Exactly what she owed Harper Holdings. "I could help," I said carefully, "but I'd like to understand the situation better. Have you talked with the property manager? Sometimes they can work out payment plans." Her expression darkened. "That's not an option. The manager there is impossible. I tried being nice, I tried reasoning with him, but he just hides behind policy and protocol. I even asked to speak to the owner directly. And apparently the mysterious owner doesn't deign to speak with mere tenants," she said bitterly. "Some faceless investment group that probably owns half the city." I took a slow sip of my latte, making a decision. "What if I told you I could get you a meeting with the owner?" She looked up sharply.
What? How?
"I have connections too, Vanessa." Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What kind of connections would you have with luxury real estate developers?" "Why don't we find out?" I stood up, leaving money for the coffee. "The ownership group has offices about 10 minutes from here. I texted them while waiting for you. They can see us now."
Now?
She looked panicked, glancing down at her outfit. "I'm not prepared for a meeting like that." "You look fine," I assured her. "Professional, put together. Isn't that what you always tell me matters?" Reluctantly, she followed me out. We walked the 10 blocks to the converted warehouse that housed Harper Holdings LLC in comfortable silence. The building was intentionally understated, no flashy signage or pretentious architecture. Just a solid, well-maintained structure with good bones, like all my investments. "This is it?" she asked dubiously as we approached. "Judge less, listen more," I advised, holding the door for her. The reception area was simple but elegant, polished concrete floors, exposed brick walls, and modern furniture. Sarah, my receptionist, looked up with a smile that faltered slightly when she saw Vanessa. "Ms. Harper," she greeted me professionally. "Your 11 o'clock is ready in the conference room." Vanessa glanced at Sarah, then at me, confusion evident on her face. You have an appointment here, too? Something like that, I said, guiding her down the hallway to the small conference room where I took most of my meetings. I opened the door, revealing a simple space with a wooden table, comfortable chairs, and large windows overlooking the city. On the table sat a folder labeled Monarch Residences, Unit 1107. Have a seat, I said, gesturing to a chair. Aren't we waiting for the owner? She asked, still standing. No, I replied, sitting at the head of the table. We're not. I don't understand, she said, her frustration growing. Jenna, what is this? I thought you were taking me to meet the property owner. You are meeting the property owner, I said quietly. I'm the managing director of Harper Holdings, LLC. We own the Monarch. And your building, Vanessa. And 2 others across town. She stared at me, frozen in place. Comprehension dawned slowly, disbelief washing over her features. That's not possible, she whispered. I opened the folder, turning it so she could see the contents, her lease agreement with her signature, payment records, correspondence with management. I established the company 10 years ago with my inheritance, I explained. I've been growing it ever since. Your inheritance? Our parents' money. She looked stunned. But you said you used that for a down payment on your condo. I never owned a condo. I bought a small fourplex, lived in 1 unit, and rented out the others. Then I leveraged that to buy more properties. She sank slowly into a chair, her eyes never leaving my face. All this time, she whispered, all those times I made fun of your apartment, your job. You've been paying rent to me, I finished for her. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered? I asked simply. Would you have seen me differently? Her silence was answer enough. You're currently 21 days late on your rent, I continued, keeping my voice professional. With late fees, you owe $4,000. According to your lease, we're within our rights to begin eviction proceedings. You wouldn't evict your own sister, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I've built this company by treating all tenants equally, I replied, but I'm willing to discuss options. She slumped in her chair, humiliation and shock washing over her face. It wasn't just the money or the missed rent. It was the fundamental shift in how she saw me. For the first time in our lives, I held all the cards. What kind of options? She finally asked. I didn't evict her, I upgraded her, but on my terms. The conference room fell silent as I considered my sister's question. All my life, I'd imagined this moment of reckoning between us, the day Vanessa would finally see me clearly. But faced with her genuine vulnerability, revenge felt hollow. Here's what I can offer, I said finally, my voice steady. There's a studio apartment available in my West Side property. It's small but newly renovated, and the rent is about half what you're paying now. I'll transfer your lease there with no penalty and set up a payment plan for the back rent. Her eyes widened. You want me to move from the Monarch to some basic building? I want to offer you a sustainable living situation while you get back on your feet, I corrected her. The West Side property is one of my first acquisitions. It's well maintained, in a good neighborhood, and within your current budget. So this is punishment, she said, a flash of the old Vanessa surfacing through her shock. You're going to make me live in some shoebox to teach me a lesson. I smiled. No, I'm offering you a financially responsible housing option based on your current income. That's not punishment, Vanessa. That's adulting. Her cheeks flushed. I don't need financial advice from my little sister. Clearly you do, I replied calmly. But there's more to my offer. The building needs a part-time leasing agent for weekends. The pay would help you catch up on what you owe. You want me to work for you? She looked offended at first, then thoughtful. Wait, is this how you started? Working in property management. I nodded. It taught me everything about this business. How to evaluate properties, how to deal with tenants, how to see the potential in spaces others overlooked. For perhaps the first time in our adult lives, she was looking at me with something like respect. I don't understand, she said after a moment. All these years, you let me think you were less successful than me. You lived in that little apartment while owning all these buildings. Why? Because I don't need a fancy apartment to feel successful, I replied. I live where I live because I choose to, because it's enough for me. I leaned forward. But more importantly, why did you need to believe you were more successful than me? The question hung in the air between us. Vanessa stared at her hands, uncharacteristically silent. You're my sister, I continued. Shouldn't my success make you happy, not threatened? It's not that simple, she finally said. All our lives, I was the star. The one everyone expected great things from. And then when Mom and Dad died, she swallowed hard. I fell apart while you just kept going, building something. I think I needed to believe I was still ahead somehow. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. So what happens now? She asked quietly. Are you going to tell everyone? Make me the family joke. No, I said. This stays between us. But things will be different going forward. No more comments about my shoebox, apartment, or my entry-level job. No more suggestions that I need to level up my life. She nodded slowly. And the apartment? The job offer? Both legitimate. Take them or leave them, but if you stay at the Monarch, you'll need to pay what you owe by Friday. 3 days later, Vanessa moved into the studio apartment in my West Side building. It was smaller than her Monarch unit, but thoughtfully designed, the kind of space that could be beautiful with the right touch. And if anyone had that touch, it was Vanessa. She started working weekends as a leasing agent the following Saturday. To my surprise, she was good at it. Her natural charm and social skills made prospective tenants feel comfortable, and her eye for design helped them envision spaces at their best potential. 2 months later, we were having coffee in my apartment when she looked around with new eyes. You know, she said thoughtfully, this place really suits you. It's unpretentious but quality. Like you. I smiled. Thank you. I still can't believe you own all these buildings and choose to live like this. You could have the penthouse at the Monarch if you wanted. I could, I agreed. But I don't need it. This is enough. I'm starting to understand that concept, she admitted. My studio actually feels peaceful. After I got over the initial shock, I realized how much energy I was spending trying to maintain an image I couldn't afford. Her phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and grinned. That's Mark. We have a potential tenant coming to see the corner unit in 20 minutes. She stood, gathering her things. Who would have thought I'd enjoy real estate this much? It's in our blood, I smiled. Harper women are builders. At the door, she paused. Thank you. Not just for the job or the apartment, but for... She hesitated, searching for words. For not being as petty as I would have been in your position. What would you have done? I asked, curious. She laughed. Oh, I would have evicted me, then told everyone we know about it. Your way was better. After she left, I stood at my window watching her walk down the street. She looked different somehow, shoulders straighter, steps more purposeful. Less like someone playing a role, and more like someone finding their path. As for me, I still lived in my little apartment. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. After all, every unit around me paid me to live my best life, quietly. And there was a particular satisfaction in that which no penthouse view could ever match. But the greatest satisfaction was something else entirely. For the first time in our lives, Vanessa and I were building something together, an honest relationship. And that was worth more than any property in my portfolio.